We begin in El Paso, Texas, where U.S. border officials say roughly 2,500 migrants have been arriving in the city each day. The spike in arrivals comes as the pandemic-era restriction, known as Title 42, is set to expire next week. As Lilia Luciano reports, many of these people are coming from Nicaragua.
It makes me sad to leave my wife, my kids, my mother, says 36-year-old Edwin Antonio Cruz while in a damp makeshift shelter in El Paso as he makes plans to provide for his family of 5 in Nicaragua.
What does your daughter tell you when you talk to her? That she's going to miss you on Christmas.
He says he knows he can't stay too long in the U.S. and doesn't want to. He just hopes to work for a year or two, save, and return home.
That you're built to work, that the Nicaraguans who are here, they just want to go on to their journey and start working.
He's among thousands of Nicaraguans who've been able to cross the border in El Paso and wait for an asylum hearing while in the U.S.
These 60 people were just allowed to come in and take their first steps on U.S. soil.
But in Ciudad Juarez, just a few yards and what felt like a world away, Venezuelan migrants overlooked a line they cannot cross. Currently, under Title 42, they have to stay in Mexico.
Esperando que el artículo 42 termine para nosotros poder entrar.
So you're waiting for the lifting of Title 42 to be accepted into the U.S. because right now the U.S. is not accepting Venezuelans.
That's right, he says.
What do you think will happen if Title 42 does expire next week?
It's going to collapse, he says, because an avalanche of people in need from Venezuela are on their way.
And Lilia joins us now with more from El Paso. Lilia, what are you hearing from folks who have just crossed the border?
Catherine, there's all kinds of stories. Of course, the stories are really gut-wrenching. People who are seeking asylum in this country come for a number of reasons. I've heard everything from, a man that we interviewed who was telling me, look, I'm not trying to get asylum forever. I just want to come for some time. Of course, that might not categorize under asylum or qualify as asylum, but he knows that he has some time to be in the country and work and bring a better life to his family in Nicaragua. But just like that, I've heard from people who are saying, I had to flee. I had no time. I had to just run basically across a number of countries with my child, with my spouse. My family doesn't know where I am because of organized crime groups that have chased them, that have basically chased them out of their countries. I've heard from people in this same situation from places like Ecuador and Colombia. So there's a number of reasons why people are coming. But what I did find is that at least when they cross this border right here, right behind, it's a sense of relief. However, on the other side of the border, I got a chance to cross to Juarez and talk to a group of Venezuelans. Venezuelans still right now under Title 42, which will remain in place until Wednesday unless things change and a judge rules otherwise. Those Venezuelans are not allowed to come and stay in the United States and claim asylum here. They're being expelled directly to Mexico. So this group of people I spoke with said, we're hoping that come Wednesday, Title 42 ends and we can once again cross into the United States and make our case for asylum.
What are you hearing from residents about the stress that it's creating on their community?
It's interesting, Catherine, because before I came to El Paso, I thought you would see a lot more crowding. Of course, it's very cold. You see the crowding on the other side of the border. Then people come right through here. They walk right behind me, go and get processed. The authorities there, Border Patrol, after they process them, then they release people to the community or even to the streets. Some end up having to sleep on the streets. The shelters here are full. Where you do see some perhaps interaction with the community or perhaps some straining of resources is at the airport, where people have to wait. Some of them can't afford the plane tickets. Others are just waiting for flights to become available or for family to send them the funds to buy these tickets. But I did meet a man this morning who was telling me, look, the reason who was housing or providing shelter for a group of migrants to sleep outside of the cold in his warehouse. He says the idea came to him because he didn't have enough people to work with him in that warehouse. It's a recycling facility and a cardboard warehouse. And he says, I couldn't find people who wanted to work. And suddenly people started showing up. They wanted to work. They wanted to be productive. And so he found it very beneficial to find people to contribute to his business. he would pay them, and at the same time then provides shelter that was much needed for these migrants. So to be honest, I haven't heard that the local community here in El Paso is having to deal directly too much with this train, because people don't stay here. They stop here on their way to other cities: New York, New Jersey, Baltimore, Miami. I've heard so many different cities.
I just want to take that a step further. So based on the reporting you've done on the ground, how long are these migrants staying in the El Paso area before they're moving on to other cities?
It all depends. Ideally, the way it flows and how it has been going ever since even MPP was in place, since the Trump administration, and I've taken that journey with migrants. People go from the processing center once they're processed or released, whether it was by Border Patrol or ICE. They go to a bus station and then they keep going. Here, a lot of people, what they've told me is, we were planning on doing that kind of thing, but along the way in Mexico, they were kidnapped. They were, they faced extortion, not just in Mexico, from cartels, from the authorities themselves, they say, from even in Guatemala and other places. So by the time they get here, they run on zero funds, and then they have to wait. So however long it takes their family to send them enough money, I've heard from people who say somewhere between 3 days to a week on the shelters. The same shelters are saying, we want to keep this moving so we can provide the space for the people coming behind them. So anywhere between a couple of days, 4 days to a week. I haven't heard about people staying longer than that.
Lilia Luciano, thanks.